Welcome back to The Explainer. Look, if you're aiming for what pretty much everyone considers India's absolutely premier management institute, you've clicked on the exact right thing. Today, we've got one very specific goal. We're going to completely decode the official IIM Ahmedabad shortlisting criteria for the CAT 2025 exam. That's for the 2026 to 2028 MBA batch, by the way. We're strictly sticking to the actual data and official policies here to show you what you really need to do to stay in the race.
But hey, before we start swimming in all those numbers, let's address the massive elephant in the room. Does a 99 percentile actually guarantee you admission? It's honestly the biggest myth out there. Every single year, literally lakhs of CAT aspirants are competing for a tiny handful of seats, and a huge chunk of them genuinely believe that bagging an elite, top-tier score automatically equals an interview call.
Well, let's dive right into this. The truth is actually super simple. A cutoff does not equal an interview call. Look, hitting a massive overall percentile is an incredible achievement. Absolutely, no doubt about it. But it's not a golden ticket. It's really just the very first hurdle. And so many students get their entire strategy completely wrong just because they misunderstand what these cutoffs actually represent.
So here's our quick roadmap for today's explainer. First, the admission myth. Second, minimum cutoffs. Third, the hidden catch. Fourth, beyond the percentile. And finally, safe targets.
All right, kicking things off with Section 1, the admission myth.
So this myth usually comes down to just this one single number, 99. It becomes a total obsession, doesn't it? Aspirants spend months, sometimes literally years, focusing completely on hitting that magic 99 percentile mark. They think it's the absolute only metric that matters. But you know, IIM Ahmedabad evaluates candidates in a much more sophisticated way than just staring at one peak number.
Which perfectly brings us to Section 2, official minimum cutoffs.
Okay, so the absolutely crucial takeaway here is this. You must clear all sectional cutoffs simultaneously. And honestly, this is where so many dreams just get completely shattered. Because an amazing sky-high overall score, it's entirely useless to you if even one single section, whether that's VARC, DILR, or Quant, dips below the required threshold. Balance isn't just nice to have, it's completely non-negotiable.
Let's actually look at how this builds out across the different categories, because this right here is your absolute baseline. Okay, so if you're in the general category, the minimum overall percentile to even be considered is 95. But check out those requirements too. You also need at least an 85 in verbal, an 85 in DILR, and an 85 in quant. Now for OBC candidates, that overall minimum drops to 90, with sectional cutoff sitting at 80 across the board. For the SC category, you're looking at an 85 overall and 75 for each individual section. And finally, for the ST category, it's a 75 overall with 65 required in every single section. Take a quick mental snapshot of your specific category here, because if you miss just one of those sectional numbers, even by a fraction of a percent, you're out. Eliminated.
All right, let's step into Section 3, the hidden score catch.
Now pay really close attention to this definition of a positive raw score. IIM Ahmedabad has this strict requirement. You need a score strictly greater than 0 in every single section of the CAP. Think about what that actually means. If you just have a totally terrible day in one section and score 0, or worse, you get negative marks, boom. Instant elimination. It literally does not matter if your final overall percentile is a jaw-dropping 99.9. If you bomb a single section into the negatives, the whole application is over.
Moving right along to Section 4, beyond the CAT percentile.
So let's ask a pretty logical question based on the data we were just looking at. If the minimum requirement for the general category is a 95 percentile, does hitting a 95 mean you're essentially in? The answer is a massive, resounding no. All clearing that baseline does is put you into the screening pool. It just means, hey, they won't toss your application in the trash right away. But it absolutely, definitely does not guarantee an interview call.
The real answer here lies in the evaluation factors. See, once you clear those initial CAT cutoffs, IIM Ahmedabad starts digging into your Class 10 marks, your Class 12 marks, how you performed during graduation, your academic diversity, your work experience, and of course, category considerations. This is exactly why you'll see a candidate with a 98 percentile get completely rejected, while someone with, say, a 96 percentile, but who has just a phenomenal academic track record and killer work experience, gets that interview call. It's a fully holistic evaluation.
So knowing all of this, how are you supposed to actually prepare? That brings us to Section 5, setting your safe targets.
Let's look at the general category first. The official minimum, 95th percentile. But your safe target, like what you should actually be aiming for when you're grinding through those mock exams,
99th percentile or higher. Aiming for just the bare minimum is incredibly risky, mainly because your overall profile would have to be literally flawless to carry a borderline CAT score.
For OBC candidates, it's a very similar story. The minimum just to apply is a 90 percentile. But let's be real about the competition here. A 97 plus percentile is a much, much safer bet if you actually want to secure that interview call.
Now, if you fall under the SC category, the official minimum sits at an 85 percentile. However, if you want to give yourself a nice, comfortable buffer and really stand out in that massive applicant pool, you should realistically be targeting a 92 plus percentile.
And finally, for the ST category, the baseline minimum is a 75th percentile. But again, please don't just settle for the baseline. A much more highly recommended, safer target is an 85 plus percentile. Look, across all of these categories, pushing way past the minimum is exactly how you compensate for any slight weaknesses you might have in your past academic records.
Because at the end of the day, it all really comes down to this core takeaway. Clearing the cutoff only gets your foot in the door. A strong overall profile is what ultimately earns the interview call. Getting that sectional balance right on the CAT exam gets you noticed, sure, but your academic foundation and your actual life experiences, that's what seals the deal.
So I'm going to leave you with one final thought to chew on today. Is your holistic profile as strong as your CAT preparation? Really take a hard, honest look at your academics, your diversity of experience, and your work history. Because mastering that CAT 2025 exam, that's just chapter 1 of cracking IIM Ahmedabad. Thanks so much for joining me on The Explainer today, and hey, absolute best of luck with your prep.